Welcome to HushyRest, a quiet place for those drawn to quiet mysteries and slow stories. Have you ever wondered what secrets hide in a forest under the full moon? Tonight, I'll take you on a journey called Night of Secrets of the Wolf Moon, where the gentle murmurs of the forest and the silver glow of the moon reveal their soft secrets slowly and quietly. You find yourself in a small, quiet town, somewhere in the northwest of the United States. Snow rests on rooftops, on roads, on silent hills, reflecting the pale silver light of the wolf moon above. Tall trees surround the town, standing patiently, unmoving, their branches catching moonlight and holding shadows like memories. The earth is cold but gentle. It carries faint sounds, distant footsteps, a soft wind, something moving far away. Lights glow behind a few windows, warm, steady, while beyond the last house the forest waits, open, quiet. Have you ever felt that some places observe gently, not to frighten, but to remember? As you walk along a narrow path at the forest edge, a soft glow appears between the trees. Not a lantern, not a reflection, not a star falling low. It moves slowly, calmly, as it knows exactly where it's going. Each time you blink, it seems to shift, not closer, not further, just enough to stay noticed. The forest does not react, not sudden sound, no movement, only quiet attention. And somewhere behind you, far back in the town, a fire crackles softly, as someone, somewhere, is already telling this story. The wolf moon hangs high, watching, patient, and the night begins to open. They say that on nights like this, when the wolf moon hangs high, the forest becomes aware. Not louder, not restless, just more present. People in the nearby town have shared this story for years, always quietly, always in low voices, often near a fire when the wind slows and the night feels close enough to listen. They say there is a moment when the forest notices you, not as a threat, not as a guest, but as something passing through briefly, gently. The path through the trees grows narrower, snow resting untouched on either side. Each step presses softly into the ground, then slowly fades, as if the forest prefers not to keep records. Those who have walked there before speak of small sounds, a branch settling under its own weight, a quiet crack, then a stillness again. Nothing sharp, nothing sudden, only the movement of the things adjusting naturally. Around the fire, someone always mentions the voices, not voices like words, not names or calls, more like tones, drifting, low, steady, carried on the wind. They say you don't hear them right away. First, you feel a shift, as if the silence thickens, becoming layered, as though something invisible has stepped closer without touching anything. Shadows stretch across the snow, long, slow, shaped by the moonlight, and sometimes they seem to change, even when the moon does not. No one claims the shadow follow anyone, only that they appear to move together, calmly, like they share an understanding, as if they belong to the night, and the night knows exactly where to place them. The winds move again, quieter now, sleeping between the trees. It carries a sound some compare to paper, old paper, turning gently, as though the forest is reading something very slowly. In the town, there is an old journal, kept wrapped in cloth, passed carefully from one home to another. Its pages are thin, its ink faded, its words written by firelight. One line is often repeated, spoken softly, almost respectfully. During the wolf moon, we leave our windows open, not to invite the cold, they say, but allow the forest to listen. Those words tend to linger, hanging in the air long after they are spoken, like breath made visible, then slowly gone. And as the story is told again and again, one detail always remains the same. One night like this, the forest does not sleep. It waits, calm, unseen, aware. They also say that after the sounds, after the shadows, comes a deeper stillness, not empty, not silent, but settled, like the forest has finished adjusting. Those listening by the fire often grow quieter at this part of the story, because this is when the night begins to feel intentional. The wind slows, not stopping, just choosing its moments. Branches remain still longer, as if holding their breath, and the snow reflects the moonlight evenly, smooth and broken. It is said that this is when the presence becomes noticeable, not seen, not heard clearly, but sensed, like warmth near a flame. Some describe it as a pressure, gently, steady, never heavy. Others say it feels like being observed, kindly, without judgment. Around the fire, someone always mentions the lights, not flames, not lanterns, not reflections, just faint glimmers appearing briefly, then easing away. They do not rush, they do not flash, they hover patiently as if waiting for the forest to settle around them. And all note from the journal is often remembered here. Its words faint, written carefully, as though the writer feared disturbing the night. Some lights arrive only when the forest is ready. They do not guide, they do not warn. They simply remain until they are no longer needed. Those who hear this part of the story often shift closer to the fire, not from fear, but from a quiet sense of attention, because this is when the forest feels inhabited, not crowded, not busy, just gently shared. The shadows return, softer now, blending with the snow. The edges blur, losing shape, becoming part of the ground again. The wind carries one last sound, low, distant, not a call, not a cry, just movement far away, reminding the listener that the night is white. Those who tell the story say, this is the moment when many stop walking, not because the path ends, but because the forest feels complete, as if it has shown enough. For now, the journal never explains what happens next. It pages thin out, entries shorter, handwriting softer. Only one final lines appear before the ink fades completely. When the night grows this calm, it is listening, and it remembers those who listen back. The fire crackles softly as the story reaches this point. Sparks rise, then vanish, like the lights in the forest. And everyone sitting there knows, without needing to say it, that whatever waits beyond this moment does so patiently, quietly, under the watchful glow of the wolf moon. They say that is where the story begins to change. Not suddenly, not sharply, but noticeably. Those who have walked the forest under the wolf moon often speak of their light first, small at the beginning, distant, barely separating themselves from the moonlight. At first, they appear between the trees, steady and moving, not flickering, not drifting, simply present, as if they have always been there and are only now being noticed. People around the fire lower their voices here, because this is when the forest feels more deliberate. The lights begin to shift, slowly, never rushing. They move just enough to remain at the edge of the sight, always ahead, never behind. Those who notice them often pause, not out of fear, but uncertainty, because something quiet settles in the chest, a question without words. It is better, they wonder, to follow what waits ahead, or to turn back toward warmth, toward the familiar glow of home. The forest offers no answer. It remains still, balanced, neither encouraging nor warning. Shadows deepen between the trees, longer now, more defined. They stretches across the snow, cruising past, overlapping softly. Some say the shadows appear to shift position when no cloud passes the moon. Not quickly, not clearly, just enough to suggest awareness. The story tells of a traveler, unnamed, remembered only by their choice. They stop at the edge of a clearing, light ahead, darkness behind. The fire crackles softly as this part is told, because this is where the decision always rests. Old legends from the town speak of nights like this, nights when the wolf moon stands highest and the forest opens its memory. One tale says the lights are not meant to guide. Another says they are reminders, echoes left behind by those who once walked the same path. A weathered page from the journal is often quoted here. It is ink thin, its letters careful. The forest shows only what you are willing to see, and it never asks you to stay, but it remembers when you do. Those listening by the fire feel the weight of the words, gently, not heavy, but grounding. The lights remain ahead, patient, steady. The shadows hold their shape, calm, attentive, and the forest waits, allowing the traveler and the listener to choose slowly without urgency. They say that once decision is felt, the forest responds, not with sound, not with movement, but with proximity. The light no longer remains far ahead. They drift closer, slowly, as if the distance itself is softening, still gentle, still steady, never demanding attention. Those who tell the story mention how the snow begins to glow faintly, not brighter, just clearer, each surface defined by moonlight, as though the night is sharpening its focus. Carefully, shadows gather near the path, no longer stretched thin. They rest closer to the traveler now, calm, composed, never crossing the path directly, only aligning alongside it. Around the fire, someone always knows how quiet this path feels, because even the wine seems to choose stillness, lingering, then easing away. And all legend surface here, passed down in fragments. It speaks of watchers, not guardians, not spirits, but memories, shaped by moonlight and time. The legend says when the wolf moon rises high enough, the forest remembers every traveler, every pause, every choice, and sometimes it allows those memories to glow. The light responds gently, one dimming, another brightening, never blinking, never sudden, like a slow conversation spoken without words. Those walking the path often feel a quiet pull, not forward exactly, not backward, more like an invitation to remain present, attentive. The journal offers another fragment here, its paper brittle, edges worn smooth, written by someone who stayed long enough to notice. The light drew closer only when the night trusts you. They do not test, they observed, and fade when the forest is satisfied. As this line is spoken, the fire chafed, embers glowing softly, mirroring the lights among the trees. Shadows begin to overlap, not merging, but sharing a space. Their edges blur, becoming less distinct, as if they are slowly returning to the ground from which they rose. Those listening feel a strange calm settle in, the kind that arrive not when answers are given, but when questions no longer need to be asked. The forest feels closer now, not enclosing, but aware, holding the moment carefully without pressing it forward. The lights hover at a respectful distance, steady, warm, and the shadows remain still, balanced, at ease. And somewhere within the quiet, a sense forms that the night is preparing, not for fear, but for understanding. The wolf moon hangs above it all, unchanged, patient, watching the forest, the lights, and those who listen, as the story moves slowly toward its next unfolding. They say that when the forest has shown enough, it begins to settle again, not retreating, not closing, simply arranging itself with care. The light stops drifting closer, finding their places between the trees, each one steady, calm, spaces as if following a pattern, not random, not urgent, just right. Those who describe this moment often pause, because this is when the night feels complete. Shadows soften further, losing their edges, blending gently with the snow. They no longer suggest movement, only presence, as if they have finished what they came to do. The forest breathed again, slowly, evenly. A faint whine returned, touching the branches, then passing on. Nothing creaks loudly, nothing startles. Everything feels measured, intentional. By the fire, someone always mentions the choice that was never forced. How the traveler could have turned back at any moment, and how the forest never rushed them, never followed, never called out. An elder once explained in his way, the night does not chase, it waits, and when it is seen, it becomes still again. The journal's final fragment for this part of the story is brief. Its handwriting lighter, less certain, but peaceful. I stayed longer than I planned, not because I was afraid to leave, but because the forest felt finished. Those words tend to settle deeply because they carry no warning, no promise, only acceptance. The lights begin to dim, not all at once, one by one, as if each has completed its quiet task, leaving the moonlight to fill the spaces again. The path looks ordinary now, familiar, calm, snow smooth, air cold, trees standing quietly where they always were. Yet those who hear this story now, something has changed, not in the forest, but in the one who walked it. The night remains open, wide, peaceful, no longer waiting, simply existing. And the wolf moon continues its slow climb high above the trees. The forest returns to its gentle silence, holding no tension, no questions, only memory. The fire burns lower at this point in the telling, crackling softly, embers glowing, then settling. And everyone listening understands, without needing explanation, that what comes next is not louder, not darker, but quieter still, more personal, and closer than before. They say this is when the encounters begin, not suddenly, not dramatically, but close enough to feel personal. Those gathered by the fire often lower their voices here, because this part of the story feels nearer, more intimate. The forest remains calm, moonlight steady, snow undisturbed. Yet something subtle changed, not in the trees, but in the air. It is said the first song is a sound, a voice, soft, distant, carried gentle by the wind. Not a call, not a cry, just a tone, familiar somehow, almost recognizable. Some swear it sounds like their own voice, not speaking words, just breathing or singing far away. Others hear animals, a deer, a fox, moving when no one can be seen. Footsteps suggested, then erased by silence. Around the fire, someone always asks whether it is real or only the mind, responding to the quiet. No answers that question directly. They say, if you listen closely, the sounds never repeat exactly. They echo, but slightly altered, softened, as if remembered, rather than spoken. The travelers notice when the snow then marks appear, shallow, careful, forming a line along the path. Not paw prints, not boots, not hoops. Their shape unfamiliar, their spacing calm, deliberate. They do not rush, they do not wander. They move alongside the path, parallel, never crossing. Those who tell the story always pause here, letting the fire crackle, letting the wind pass, allowing the listener to feel the space between sounds. The footprints do not lead forward, nor back, they simply continue, quietly, as if keeping pace. And all legends surface again at this point. It speaks of reflections, not in mirrors, but in moments. The legend says, one certain night, the forest shows travelers what they might sound like, what they might leave behind if they walk this path long enough. Their journal offers only a brief note here. Its letters small, careful, as if written with a steady hand. I heard myself before I realized I was not speaking. Those words sit heavily, yet calmly. Not frightening, just strength enough to stay with you. The forest does not react, does not respond. It remains still, as though this, too, is expected. A long pause follows in the telling, only the sound of wind, distant, a single all far away. And a single that quiet, the listener is left to wonder whether the night reflects the traveler, or whether the traveler has begun to reflect the night. They say, after the first sound, the night grows more attentive, not louder, but closer, as if listening back. Those telling the story often pause here, letting the fire settle, embers glowing softly, because this is when the voices begin to change. The sounds returned, nearer now, carried less by the wind and more by the space between trees. They are still gentle, still low, but they feel intentional. Some claim the voices begin to imitate movement, a step followed by another, matching the traveler's space, never ahead, never behind, always beside. Others hear animals again, closer this time, a wolf far off, not howling, just breathing, a deer shifting weight, unseen, patient. Around the fire, some always mention the moment of doubt, the question that forms without words. It is the forest or the mind feeling the quiet. The snow reveals more signs now. The marks deepen slightly, still careful, still calm. They change shape, softly, as though deciding what they want to be. Not quiet pause, not quiet feet. The rhythm remains steady, unhurried. Those who have seen them say, the prints never approach directly. They arc gently, curving, keeping distance, as if respecting an unseen boundary. A hush settles into the trees. Even the branches remain still, holding their places. The journal offers another line here, written faintly, almost unfinished. The night does not cross toward you, it walks alongside until you notice. The sentence often draws a longer silence, the kind that stretches, comfortable, like a held breath, because this is when the traveler realizes the forest is not showing something new, it is repeating something already known, softly, patiently. The voices fade again, not disappearing, just receding, like echoes choosing rest. The footprints begin to thin, spacing wider, edges blurring. Soon they are undistinguishable from the natural marks of snow and wind. Those listening by the fire often relax their shoulders here, feeling the tension is replaced by curiosity, calm. The night remains open, generous, unthreatening, and the forest seems to offer a quiet soul, without words, that not everything seen or heard is meant to be followed. Some things, it suggests, are meant to walk beside you only for a while. A pause follows, long, uninterrupted, just wind through branches, in a distant sound too far to name. And at this pause, the listener is left to wonder whether the encounters were external or whether the forest simply learned how to speak in familiar ways. They say the final encounter is not something seen, but something felt. Those who tell the story often lower their voices to a near whisper here, because this is when the forest feels closest. The travelers notice the quiet first, not the absence of sound, but a something like the night was rubbed itself tired. Even the wind seems to pause, choosing stillness. Branches remain motionless, shadows resting where they fall. And then the voice returns once more, not distant now, not carried, but near. It does not speak words, it breathes slowly, evenly, matching the rhythm of the traveler's own breath. Some say this is the moment when the forest mirrors completely. Voice, movement, presence. The snow beneath the moonlight reveals one final sign. A single set of marks, close, deliberate, stopping exactly where their traveler stops. No approach, no retreat, just alignment. Around the fire, this is where no one interrupts, where the crackle of the wood becomes only sound. The legend explains softly that the forest never takes form, it reflects it. Whatever you hear is what you bring, what you see is what you notice. The journal's final words on this night are brief, almost kind. I stood still, and the night stood with me. Those words linger longer than any others, because they hold no warning, no fear, only understanding. The voice fades gently, not vanishing, simply stepping back, like someone leaving a room quietly without closing the door. The mark in the snow softens, edges dissolving until nothing remains, only smooth ground, moonlit and touch. The forest breathes again, slow, deep, sound returns, distant, natural, and all goes far away once. The silence settles, comfortable, complete. Those listening by the fire often feel their bodies relax here, as if the night itself has exhaled. The story never says what the traveler does next, whether they continue forward or turn back, because the encounter was never about direction, only awareness. And as the wolf moon begins its slow descent, still bright, still watching, the forest releases the moment, keeping only the memory of having been noticed, briefly, gently. The fire burns low now, embers glowing, fading, settling into ash, and the night returns to its quiet balance, leaving behind a simple truth spoken without words. Some encounters do not wish to be understood, only remembered. They say After the final encounter, nothing dramatic happens. No chase, no revelation, just a gradual return to motion. Those by the fire often describe it as a loosening, as if the forest, having leaned close, finally eases back. The traveler noticed warmth returning to their hands, a subtle reminder that they are still alone, still present. The path ahead becomes visible again, not brighter, not clearer, simply ordinary. Snow creaks softly beneath each step now, a sound that had been absent, restored. The trees sway once more, slowly, naturally, their shadows shifting, no longer fixed, no longer watching. The traveler walks on, unhurried, not because there is no fear, but because fear has lost in shape. Around the fire, someone always stirs at this point, adjusting their seat, clearing their throat, as if remembering their own body. The legend says this is when the forest releases its hold, not in disappointment, but completion. Nothing follows, nothing calls. The silence that remains is not empty, it feels settled. The traveler pauses one, looking back, not expecting anything, and finding nothing, only trees, snow, moonlight, as they have always been. Yet something has shifted, not in the forest, but in the way it is seen. The journal records only simple line here, written without hesitation. The night let me go. Those words are often repeated softly, then left alone, because they do not ask for explanation. The fire crackles gently, and the story moves forward. They say the rest of the journey passes quietly. The town lights appear again in the distance, faint, steady, unchanged. Windows glow, streets sleep, lives continue. Onward. The traveler does not speak of the encounter, not because it was frightening, but because words feel unnecessary. Some things once felt do not wish to be named. By the fire, the storyteller's voice slows, lower, softer. The wolf's moon remains above, still full, still watchful, yet no longer heavy. It has done what it came to do. The forest settles in itself. Snow erases all sign of passage. Paths forget footsteps, and the night resumes its balance. Those listening often realize then that nothing was taken and nothing was given. Only a moment of recognition, brief, mutual. The legend ends without warning, not final lesson, no closing statement, just understanding that the forest does not seek belief, only presence. The fire burns low, embers pulse gently, then rest. In one by one, listeners feel so sleep approach, carrying with them not fear, but a quiet sense of having been near something that could choose just once to notice them. The wolf moon drifts higher or lower. No one is certain, because by then eyes are closed, breath slows, and the forest returns to being simple a forest waiting. They say there is a moment after the story ends when no one speaks, not because the tale is unfinished, but because it feels complete. The fire, often a final warmth, soft, steady, its lights no longer dancing, just glowing. Those gathered sit quietly, listening to the night beyond the circle, wind brushing distant branches, snow settling almost imperceptibly. The storyteller does not add more, does not explain, does not interpret, because the forest never asks to be explained. Some stories are not meant to linger loudly. They fade, they wait, moonlight fades, slowly, without announcement. The wolf moon remains, but its presence feels lighter now, as if it, too, is preparing to rest. The night stretches, comfortable, white, inviting stillness. Breathing deepens, thoughts loosens, the edges of wakefulness soften. Nothing more happens, and that is exactly the point. The forest has returned to itself, and so has the listener. The fire sinks into embers, red, dim, calm, and the quiet that follows sleeps begin to arrive gently without being called, and the last glow settles into ash, and the moon keeps into silent watch. The night offers only one final gift, rest.